Gentlemen, Sean Kidney, CEO of the Climate Bonds Initiative here, welcoming you to this webinar on sovereign, green, social and sustainability bonds. At the Climate Bonds Initiative, we've done a report interviewing sovereign issuers from around the world. We have a couple of them on the representatives on the call today, and describing how people have gone about issuing sovereign thematic bonds, what the story of their success or otherwise, but basically success has been, and a bit of a look at advice for others. I'm delighted today to be able to welcome a star-studded cast of commentators and storytellers. First, we've got Irianti Hadindia Dia, who's the head of Sukuk Development, or in fact the Director of Islamic Financing at the Director General of Budget and Financing of the Ministry of Finance in the Republic of Indonesia. She stepped in very kindly at the last minute to replace Luki Al-Foreman, who's had to accompany the Minister of Finance in Indonesia on to a meeting. We also have with us Swissa Arya Pruthia, who's the Section Head of Sustainability at the Pui Fakon Institute for Economic Research, part of the Bank of Thailand in Bangkok. She's been with the Bank of Thailand for 17 years. Most recently, she's Deputy Director. The last 2 months has been in this very interesting job with a focus on sustainability. We have Farnham Golly, who's the sustainable for capital markets in Europe and Middle East and Asia for HSBC, and really the mastermind behind HSBC's fantastic sustainable bonds program, I have to say. And we also have Apaniza Tuitako, Apaniza, I'll get that pronunciation right one day, the Reserve Bank, from the Reserve Bank of Fiji, who's been there for about 20 years now, so he really knows where all the bodies are buried, so to speak, who's going to talk about the Fijian issuance. But to kick us off today, we've got Caroline Harrison, who's our Senior Research Analyst at the Climate Bonds Initiative, who will do a bit of a presentation of the report. We'll be adding the report to the chat function in a little while. If you haven't seen it, you'll be able to download it in a little while. If you want to ask questions, you can in the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please do. We will attempt to answer them by text, and we'll put a couple up to the panel as time goes on. That's the background. This is a discussion about sovereign thematic bonds, what's happened, where we're going, lessons learned, and of course, lessons learned specifically from people who've actually been involved in it. This is a recorded session. You will be able to listen to it afterwards or share it with your friends. You'll be able to find out details on the climatebonds.net website or on our YouTube channel. This particular webinar is being live broadcast on Facebook as we speak. Exciting. And we hope that many people will be able to listen to the words of our panelists. To get us going, Caroline, give us a little bit of a flavor of what's in the report. Over to you, please. Here we go. Let's press the PowerPoint opens up.
Okay. So thanks, Sean, and thanks to panel members for joining the discussion today. It's my pleasure to have this opportunity to share the screen with you. I'm Caroline Harrison, as Sean said. I'm a research analyst at Climate Bonds Initiative, and together with Leah Mooting, who is manning the chat today, I am the co-author of the research paper that we're going to talk about and that has motivated this discussion. So what motivated the project? First question. For the last decade, Climate Bonds has been working to mobilise the debt capital markets for climate change solutions. And last November, we were absolutely thrilled when the cumulative issuance of green bonds finally reached $1 trillion. But for scale, just the sovereign bond asset class, with bonds with a year that have a year or greater to maturity, is $45 trillion. So the sovereign asset class is 45 times the size of the current green bond market. And, you know, sovereign issuers have the ultimate power here to scale the green bond market, not only due to their size, but also because of their responsibilities of budget management, resource allocation, and most crucially, their high profile position of influence. So we want at Climate Bonds to support and encourage governments to direct their expenditures towards green and social projects. And we are contributing to that by shining a spotlight on the issuance to date by doing this survey. So who took part in the project? Well, we started this project in late September, at which point 22 sovereign issuers had printed green, social and sustainability bonds. We invited all of them to participate in the project, and 19 of them agreed. And at the time of publication, the respondents to the survey had collectively printed $93 billion worth of GSS debt. So well done to them. And the split was 8 developed and 11 emerging markets, so 19 in total. So what did we learn from the conversations with issuers? Well, broadly speaking, sovereign GSS bonds can help to catalyse in local markets by providing access to a large and liquid investment. This creates space for other types of lower rated entities to issue GSS bonds, which tends to get the market going. Large demonstration bonds can help with infrastructure development, establish best practice, set precedent, in transparency and disclosure. And this can encourage dedicated green, social and sustainability mandates, giving rise to demand. So just getting everything sort of turning over. Sovereign GSS bonds can contribute to a larger strategic vision, such as meeting NDCs or embedding the UN Sustainable Development Goals into government policy. I've put pricing benefits on here, so they may not be a reason to issue, but where they are present, we expect that debt management offices will encourage governments to find more suitable expenditures, which will help to create a pipeline for further GSS issuance. Respondents told us that sovereign GSS bonds can lead to enhanced cross-border collaboration, which can take multiple forms, including sharing information with counterparts in other countries or speaking at international events to share some of the experiences. So the process of issuing a sovereign green bond is not without its challenges, and all of the people that we spoke to highlighted that, but most of those challenges have tested solutions, and respondents to the survey repeatedly said that the benefits more than made up for any of the smaller hurdles. So we asked respondents to offer some ideas for prospective issuers of sovereign GSS bonds. And this is what they came up with. So 5 main suggestions. Panel members can elaborate on this a bit more during the discussion, but overall, I would say the key messages here are clarity, transparency, and open communication. So if you've got those 3 things in place, the process of issuing the GSS sovereign bond will move along more smoothly. So everyone's favourite subject, pricing. So where everyone wants to know about the Greenian, and of course I wanted to get stuck into this, having spent the last 4 years examining the topic. So as always, availability of data and points of comparison remain challenging, but we built yield curves for 23 out of the 32 sovereign bonds in our sample, and only 4 of those exhibited a normal new issue premium. So what does that mean for the rest? Well, 10 priced on their yield curves and 9 priced inside the yield curve. So there were 9 instances of agreenium in our sample. Adding another dimension to the analysis, we looked at the average demand for the prior 3 bonds from each issuer and averaged that to compare it to the demand for the green social or sustainability bonds where there was data. And in most cases, the GSS bond did attract higher book cover. Now, I know Farnham has a lot of experience with this element of the issuance process, and I'm sure she will elaborate on this topic as part of the discussion. So on the topic
Caroline, just to be clear, you're saying in 9 of the bonds, there was tighter pricing for the green and sustainability bond.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Higher level of subscription rates. Okay.
Yeah, so the subscription rates are in the chart on the right-hand side of the screen. And what we did there was we looked at the prior 3 issuances from each of the issuers for which we had subscription data. We averaged them and we just compared it. So it's just a simple average of the prior 3 issuance, but in most cases, the green social or sustainability bond attracted much more interest compared to vanilla equivalents.
Thank you. We'll see what our speakers think about this with their own experiences in a little while. Go ahead.
I mean, interestingly, the last data point on this slide is that 44% on average of each bond was allocated to GSS investors. So you can see that there's appetite from this unique and dedicated investor base, which is great. So there's loads more detail on this subject in the research paper, which I would encourage you to read if you haven't already. Don't be intimidated and think that it's a commitment, because it's only 24 pages long and at least half of that is charts and graphics. So it's a reasonably short paper, but you'll get a lot out of it, I hope. So where are we going with this discussion? Well, by the end, I want to highlight some numbers which I think demonstrate the scale of the potential for sovereign GSS bonds. So the OECD has stated that the annual required investment in green infrastructure is $6.3 trillion. And for scale, let's remind ourselves that in November, the green bond market cumulatively reached $1 trillion. So 6.3 times the current market size is needed in annual investment in green infrastructure. The International Energy Agency goes even further, actually, and points to a spending need of $13.5 trillion, although that is cumulative expenditure by 2030 for renewable energy and energy efficiency. And where's that going to come from? Well, there is the $45 trillion worth of sovereign bonds that are currently outstanding. That is a lot of expenditure. And why isn't that expenditure green and climate friendly? Let's start seeing where those expenditures can be green. Come on, sovereign issuers, start to evaluate all of your expenditures through a GSS lens. Take a leaf out of the book of France, who are already doing this. They have already implemented this practice, and they do not approve any expenditures without first seeing whether or not they comply with the EU taxonomy asset class classifications. So at the end of last year, we had got up to 96 billion of sovereign GSS bonds, and that's great. That's a great start. And at the time of issuance, 14 more issuers had committed to the market. And in the past couple of weeks, since we issued the research paper, a couple more have also committed. So I think Singapore is one, Pakistan perhaps, which is fantastic. And that still leaves 120 issuers, including some of the biggest ones like the US, China, Japan. Come on, where's your green? They've yet to commit to this market. So, again, if you want more detail, please read the paper. And I'm now going to hand over to Sean, our trusty CEO, who will lead the panel discussion. So thanks for listening.
Thanks, Caroline. Thank you for the information. The link to the report is in the chat box. Please do click and have a look if you'd like to read it. It's a great read, an easy read. Dwi Irianti, Indonesia is, of course, the leader. You have done green sukuk, 3 massive green sukuk so far, established a whole new idea with your sovereign green sukuk, in the market. And you've managed to continue to repeat the success of the first one with investors and with the nature of demand. Can you tell us a little bit about the program, how it happened, and the learnings for Indonesia?
Okay, thank you, Sen. Good afternoon to everyone from Jakarta. Of course, thank you to CBI for giving us a great opportunity to share our success story in issuing green sukuk. Well, the first that I would like to share, as we know that Indonesia already issued both conventional bond and sukuk, we call it Islamic bond, since 2006 in the global market. And for sukuk, we issue since 2009, and we issue now frequently. And for now, in the 5 letters, we already issue more than 20 billion US dollar for sukuk itself. But since 2018, we decided to issue what we call green sukuk. The question may be why we issue green sukuk rather than global sukuk, global bond or green bond, because actually from 2 types of platform, green platform and sukuk platform, actually it's very similar, because both platform need project. For green platform, we need a project to be financed. And for sukuk itself, we need a project to be utilized as underlying to fulfill Islamic principles. That's the reason. And the second things why Indonesia want to issue sukuk, actually to support our commitment in Paris Agreement. You know, in 2016, Indonesia already ratified Paris Agreement, and we committed to reduce our gas emission up to 29% in 2030, and up to 41% conditional to international support. For 29% business as usual scenario. And the purpose of Indonesia to issue green sukuk actually is implementation of Indonesia policy and commitment in combating global climate change, and as an alternative funding source, of course, to finance a green project in Indonesia. And broadening and tapping new investor base, especially green investor, and provide benchmark and encourage provide and SOEs, privates and SOEs to issue green bond and green sukuk. But compared to issue green bond with the, we call maybe the conventional or conventional bond, we need to develop what we call green framework. That's very challenging, because green framework, actually we need to give guidance for proceed management, and the green framework itself should be reviewed by reviewer and independent reviewer, and in this case we appoint CICERO. And the green framework itself content with how we use the proceed for the green sukuk, and how we choose and about green eligible projects to be financed. And also we need to provide what we call impact report after we issue. As we know that in the first issuance in 2018, we got 1.25 billion US dollars, and we tapped new green investor about 29%. That's the reason why we issue green sukuk, because at that time, investor from Europe is like reluctant to buy or invest in Sukuk. But by issuing Sukuk in Islamic finance, then from Europe, and we combine with the green format, we saw the interest from green investor from Europe. And in the next year, in 2019, we provide the first report, and the report just show our commitment that we use all the proceeds to do financing and refinancing for green eligible project, and we already show that the project itself can participate in reducing emission carbon. And after we issue and we publish our report, we saw the result of the second issuance of green global Sukuk. We get another new green investor, about 29%. And the latest ones in 2020, we issue another green Sukuk in global market. We get about 34% for the green investor. It means showing increasing the participation from a green investor. I think that one is a good thing for us to see that after we issue green Sukuk, we got like reputations that we got award from many institutions, including from CIB, about our achievement here. And we not only issue in global market, we continue do innovating here with issuing retail green Sukuk in domestic market. Why we issue a retail Sukuk in domestic market? Because we actually want to encourage people. Because we have retail investors here, about 530,000 so far investor retail in domestic market, because we issue retail Sukuk regularly every years, 3 times a year. So we want to grab awareness from retail investor by issuing green retail Sukuk. And now our retail Sukuk issued through online platform. So that's why during pandemic, it's not a matter, it's not the issue for us, because we can sell our Sukuk through online platform. And we saw here that the interesting from millennial investor of green retail Sukuk, it's increasing significantly, because now by issuing green retail Sukuk, we can tap more than 50% of millennial investor. So we can see from this result that millennial now increase their awareness about green lifestyle. So they are aware from the very beginning, when they invest and they get profit, they have to be responsible on their investment by knowing that our proceed of green Sukuk we utilize to financing for green project that give impact result for better life. That's what we see. But we can learn about our issuing in a green Sukuk, because it's not that easy. The first issuance, we have to develop a green framework, and post issuance, we have to provide annually for impact report. So a lot of work that we have to do compared to regular issuance. So we can see that why up to now, even though we start in 2018, only one SOEs that follow us to issue a green bond. Up to now, I think only Indonesia and South Asia that issue green bond or green sukuk. Because we need to work hard, but in terms of price, we never get benefit on pricing, because the investor still give the same price with the regular ones. So we would like to encourage the investor to give price benefit to issuer in order to encourage another issuer to issue a green bond or green sukuk.
So that's fantastic, and it's fantastic the linkage to the national program of growing Islamic finance. And of course, for those of us on this panel who have studied this, the underpinnings of Islamic finance are really the precursor in a way of ethical finance in the West. There's a very close relationship. We have a lot to learn from Islamic finance in the West, I would argue. Thank you. Suisa, you've been following sustainable finance for a long time. In your previous role a few months ago, you were looking at these sort of issues, working at the finance sector. It must have been amazing when the government actually issued social and green bonds as a symbolic milestone. Can you tell us a little bit of that experience and the impact in Thailand?
Thank you very much. And before I share my thoughts, I'd like to thank you, Sean, HSBC, and the team for having me on this in this conversation today. So, as Sean mentioned, in my previous role, now I'm in the research part of the Bank of Thailand. And I used to look after the sustainable banking. And in that role, I had the opportunity to really meet a lot of investors and other stakeholders and discuss about, what it is that we can do to really promote the sustainable finance market in Thailand. And, and a lot of the common answers to the questions when I asked the stakeholders and the investors was that, one, they really wanted to see the clear signal from the public sector, and also show a commitment that, we are serious about the sustainable finance market. And of course, over the past, 2.5 years, this has really, you could really see the big change in the sentiment, not only in Thailand, but also globally. And another comment that we also heard a lot was that, this is a challenge for policymakers as well. And is, where do you start? Do you start with the demand, or do you start with the supply? So for the investors, we see that there is demand for these products. And you can see in the case of the Thailand sovereign bond issuance, even in the report, I think you mentioned that we were booked, double the issuance size. So this really shows that there is really high demand for these. And so that is something that is really, I think, a positive development, especially in Thailand. And you will see that in the past year or so, for us, it's been a big issue for us to embrace sustainability since we were share of the ASEAN, and we also started, reduce use of plastics even in locals with the millennials. As Irianti mentioned, it's really something that is really the new social aspect that's really influencing this. And so we really see that this is a big leap and big positive development. And I think that we really have to thank the Public Debt Management Office and the Fiscal Policy Office for really having issued the sovereign bonds. Yeah.
It's been a major milestone, clearly. And I think Asian Development Bank also provided a lot of support for the Treasury Office to get this thing going. And do you think there's likely to be more? Has the reception been positive enough for us to look forward with optimism? What's your hunch?
I personally would like to see more, but I understand that, as the government, we also have to balance a lot of, policies regarding, debt as well, and also the prioritization of policies. So hopefully, we will be seeing more, and I'll be following the developments here.
Thank you, Suisa. Ebenezer, thank you so much for staying up late. For those of you who don't know, it's 8:30 p.m. in Fiji at the moment. So he's back at the Reserve Bank well past working hours. Can you tell us a little bit about Fiji's issuance? There's been 2 green bonds issued by Fiji so far, about the experience and the impacts and perhaps the investor interest.
Thank you, Son. Good evening from Fiji. Firstly, I would like to thank CBI for this invitation and giving us the opportunity to share our experience on the green bond. Let me just take you back to our background. You know, we are at the midst of climate change impact on a small island nation in terms of intensity and frequency. And while we have a small carbon footprint, we are at the front lines of this climate change crisis. And we are one of the most vulnerable nations on earth, and it's one of the greatest threats to our national aspirations. Because of that, government has been investing heavily on resilient infrastructure and rebuilding our nation when there's a crisis, and also promoting sustainable development. So we have been, government has been investing heavily for the past several years to ensure that our infrastructure is resilient to climate-induced events. And even so, we still have financing gap because there's a lot of projects that needs to be financed. There's a lot of need in our country. And although we are a small island nation where we get a lot of assistance from our development partners, this is still not enough. So we thought that perhaps we should pioneer some new ways. We should find our own innovative ways to attract finance. And one of those is the issuance of green bond in 2017. Just before that, in 2016, we were hit by one of the strongest cyclone in the southern hemisphere, which is Tropical Cyclone Winston. So that posed a new reality of climate change onto our shores. And in 2017, government decided to issue green bond of $100 million. We started our work a few months before that, and within 5 months from the establishment of the program, we were able to issue green bond in October 2017. We, given the demand from the investors, we had to subdivide our tenors into 13-year to cater for long-term investors, and also the huge demand from commercial banks. So that's why we issued also a 5-year tenor. And when we issued for the first time, there was an oversubscription of bonds, I think close to double of what we issued. And the participation rate, we are a small market, so usually when we float bonds, it's usually only about 3 or 4 investors. When we issued green bonds, the participation rate was 3 times more than what we usually have when we issue vanilla bonds.
3 times.
So that's the experience we had on when we issued green bonds.
Wow, fantastic result.
Yeah. The other thing I want to emphasize is that what makes us unique from the other countries is that majority of the funds that we receive from green bonds have been channeled to adaptation projects. And that's because of the effect of climate-induced disasters on our shores. And for investors, it's hard to convince them to invest into this adaptation project because it's hard for them to realize the return. So with this green bond, we're able to package, these climate-induced or climate-affected projects into bankable or returns that we can sell to our investors. So that's one major advantage that we have of green bond, because we're able to finance adaptation projects which may never be financed by private financiers. And given our experience, we thought that we should also continue with, or we should look at the issuance of other climate bonds, such as blue bonds. We're working on that at the moment. We have to, the issue is that we have to, how we can identify whether the projects are green or blue. So there's a lot of, there could be some confusion, or we're working with some external technical assistance to provide some clarification on what kind of projects that can be categorized as blue or green or both. So that's where we are at the moment.
Fantastic. So we can see further issuance coming from Fiji, everyone. By the way, everyone, that is genuine news break. A story from Fiji, a new bond in the works. And Albanese, that's a great segue to Farnham, who, of course, whose job it is to help governments issue these bonds around the world. So another lead, a fresh lead, Farnham, who didn't already know about that, of course. We've been talking for a long time about your work with different countries and this. What are you seeing globally? What's your sense of the global market here first? What's your sense of what investors are saying? Is appetite building or stabilizing? And then where are we going?
And I think the good news is that there's a great amount of momentum. I think that there is a great amount of momentum politically, and as Caroline mentioned, green bonds, green sovereign bonds really support green government strategies. And so as we see, greater levels of ambition coming from different national governments, I think they're seeing the value of green sovereign bonds to really demonstrate accountability to that level of ambition. Sean, you and I are, of course, very excited to see, one of the late holdouts in the sovereign bond market in the form of the United Kingdom announcing this year that they will issue the first green gilt. And I think, it's really fantastic to also hear the news this week, as Caroline mentioned, about Pakistan and Singapore. So continuing to see this wave of new issuance from other sovereigns. I wanted to highlight that, it is great to see the alignment of sovereign frameworks to climate strategies, but the pool of potential assets is of course much wider than just around climate mitigation. Apanisa has spoken about the way in which the framework for Fiji was allocated to projects and adaptation. When we worked with the government of Egypt last year, I think there was a huge amount of focus in their framework on their broader 2030 agenda around the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so a significant amount of the allocation of proceeds was also around water, increasing the efficiency of water use, increasing access to water through desalination technologies and wastewater treatment and sanitation. So, one of the major challenges, of course, for every sovereign in terms of developing a green bond framework has always been identifying use of proceeds, tagging projects, so to speak. And I think as we see a broader range of government policies, not only around climate mitigation and adaptation, but also around the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that's also supporting, this wave of sovereign issuance. And on the investor side, I think there's a massive amount of appetite. And, Susa made an interesting comment around kind of, do you stimulate the demand side or the supply side? But I actually think that sovereign issuance does both, because on the supply side, of course, sovereign issuance is a blueprint. It lays out potential eligibility criteria. It demonstrates to the market what can be done in terms of impact metrics. And we have certainly seen, not only in emerging markets, but also in developed markets, that kind of trickle on issuance coming, following a sovereign. But I think that sovereign green bond issuance also educates the local investor base. And, super interested to hear from Durianti that they're, looking at retail issuance, because I think that's a fantastic move to demonstrate to investors the kind of accountability and transparency that comes with the instrument. The fact that it is in many ways, a vanilla instrument like any other. You're getting government risk. It's a safe asset for investors to look onto, with the added benefit of that being able to demonstrate this accountability to climate and sustainable development strategies.
You've been given the mandate to support the UK Debt Management Office with their guild, along with another bank. So congratulations. What sort of learnings from Indonesia, Fiji, and Thailand do you think we need to take to the UK government to as they start to figure out how to do this? Or give us a flavour of what's being looked at, what you need to look at in terms of the UK government, of course, without breaching any confidentialities.
Of course, no breaking news here on this side. I think, look, the main learning that we've learned from all of the sovereigns that we've worked with has been that the framework really needs to follow on from domestic priorities and domestic strategy, because the number one question I think that sovereigns face when they look to market their green bond issuances is, how is this going to support your climate goals? How is this going to support your sustainable development strategies? And so there needs to be a clear linkage between the two. In the case of the UK government, we of course have the 10-point plan, so to speak, which is the plan to meet net zero by 2050 and achieve 60% reduction by 2030. And I think that's really going to be the cornerstone for identifying projects and use of proceeds for the UK government as well. As we've seen the same follow through in the case of Indonesia, in the case of Chile earlier this year, coming with their third green bond issuance, continuing to finance the projects they're carrying out in transport in particular, to be able to reduce emissions. So that linkage between, I think, sovereign strategy around broader climate adaptation and mitigation and sustainable development strategies and the framework is a key one to kind of start as a foundation for the development of a framework.
And Egypt, very important for emerging markets, had a fantastic placement, didn't they? They got price benefit, investor diversification, and so on. I'm thinking about other countries in ASEAN looking for models from emerging and developing countries. So sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna to add on to that. I mean, I think the examples that we've seen so far certainly have seen that repeated issuance as well as a way to continue to build up the investor base. I know that Duyanti mentioned that they're still looking for that pricing benefit. I think they've got the double whammy, of course, of a Sukuk issuance as well. So having to do a lot of investor education, not only about the green framework, but also the Sukuk structure. I think in the case of some other issuers, we've seen that return to the green bond market, the continued dialogue, as in the case of Chile, for instance, has been able to really build up, a consistent investor base and ultimately drive a pricing advantage.
And I think that point about pricing is an interesting one. Generally, bond markets don't get started with price benefit. Price benefit comes as they get going. And I suspect that's going to be the same with the Sukuk market. We need to establish liquidity, establish a market before people begin to see the advantages of it. And that's a standard thing. And in fact, in the green bond market, we have not seen price benefit until recently, as we got liquidity and scale in EUR and a couple of other currencies. And I think this is the way the whole thing will go forward. So one of these days, Swissa, I hope to see a Thai baht green bond market or sustainable bond market. Do you think that's there? We've seen a bit of issuance in overseas currencies from Thai institutions. Is there domestic interest, especially in the wake of the sovereign issuance?
Yes, definitely. I think there is much more interest now, especially with the domestic issuance that you saw. They also put in the social aspect into it for Thailand. And I think this is something that's very important for us, especially with the pandemic and recovery going forward. So I think this is something that people are keeping an eye on, and it's something that we really want to really promote going forward, because as the regulators in Thailand, we are really looking into this matter, and we do have a lot of discussions about how we can really promote the sustainable finance ecosystem in Thailand. And of course, with the sovereign bond issuance, this has really kind of like pushed the agenda going forward. And we are working on a number of initiatives together. And coming up in the next year, we are working on sustainable finance initiatives and also working together on like green taxonomies, which hopefully will help, the market even further, because as you mentioned earlier, that sometimes there's the challenge of how do we really determine what use the bonds will be used for, the eligibility of these green bonds. So we are working on that, and hopefully it will give some clarity to the market. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we'll have the demonstration. Irianti, you've done a social sukuk from the government of Thailand, and you've also done a cash wakuf domestically as a private placement. There seems to be a hell of a lot happening. Can we suggest that does it look like that the domestic market will now start taking off when it comes down to Islamic finance on top of the Islamic banks that are there and so on? Is this something we should look forward to?
Yeah, I think so, because as I mentioned before, we already have about 530,000 retail investor, and and Indonesia is most population are Muslims, so we try to encourage them in this situations, in this pandemic situations. We encourage them to do something that can help others through sukuk. So we combine between their faith with our instruments. So we issue actually not only through private placement, we already issue through retail sukuk as well. We issue on March for private placement cash wakaf link sukuk, and the profit or return of the sukuk coupon used by socialize to support what we call retina center, to help people that have that need like eyes, like what we call it to surgery their sex, and then we support them to build the buildings, retina center, and buy car to help them how they can solve their problem. And also for retail cash wakaf link sukuk, this is the first time we issue, and this year we also want to issue the second one. The result of the issuance is about 15.9 billion IDR with investor. I think we got more than 1,000 retail investor, and 30% of them is millennial. So by having this instrument in the future, of course, we try to get like endowment fund, because people just buy sukuk for now is about 2 years. They put their money for wakaf, for charity, and the coupon, they didn't get the coupon, but the coupon directly go to to solve the social program. But in the future, because wakaf actually not only for two types of wakaf, temporal and perpetual. So in the future, we encourage them to buy sukuk with perpetual. So all the money, the principal, also will we can use it as what we call endowment fund, and those endowment fund can continue to invest in this sukuk. So we can create like liquidity for social sukuk. That's
Fantastic.
the purpose. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And this, of course, comes down to the heart of the issue for sovereign issuers. It's not just about issuing for the benefit of the sovereign, It's about issuing for the benefit of the market and how you support the growth of a larger market, which is, of course, is central to Indonesia's decision to enter into this space. And Albanese, in Fiji, of course, that was part of the discussion at the time of the COP, when Fiji had the co-presidency of the COP. That is, the idea of the green bond was a demonstration issuance. Now, Fiji is the most significant economy in the small island states, of course. Have you seen interest in other small island states in doing something to raise funds in this kind of manner? Do you think this is a demonstration effect that is working outside the Fijian economy?
You said it right, Son. Since the issues, we've been getting a lot of...
You're a bit faint, Albanese. You're a bit faint.
Sorry?
Come closer to the microphone.
Since the last issuance, we've been getting a lot of inquiries from the other investors and also other Pacific Island countries. So all they want to do is to learn from how we were able to issue green bond. They want to learn about the process that we were involved with. So I think after the issuance, the IFC produced a booklet to guide other sovereign issues. So we were able to distribute copies of those guidance to many other countries that inquired with us. So yes, to answer your question, yes, there's a lot of other interest from many other Pacific Island countries.
Now, we had a discussion last night about, wouldn't it be a great idea if there was a regional green bond to benefit South Pacific countries, for example? And I'm going to say it now, because whilst there are complexities of different credit regimes across small countries, this is a classic intermediary institution. This is a bit like a conduit entity in the US. You have a large institution, raise money and distributes to smaller companies. We need Australia or New Zealand to provide a blanket guarantee. So if you're out there in the Department of Foreign Affairs of Australia and New Zealand, here is a policy opportunity for you to all states for providing guarantee for bond issuance for a green bond for the region. Have I overstepped my mark, Albanese? Is that okay?
Thank you, Son.
We have to try. And the art of all of this is looking for fresh ways to ensure that low-cost capital can be used to revive our economies post-pandemic, but to revive them in ways that are consistent with the green future that we all want and we all need and is essential for us. And that's the challenge here. Governments have an enormous role, I guess, Farnham, in showing how to do this. And what's the advice you give governments when they come knocking on your door and saying, those folks over in Indonesia, this green bond, what have I got to do? How do I do this? This must be one of the most common conversations you have. How do you start it off? Give us a little hint.
Absolutely. So the first thing is actually to start an inter-ministerial group to help them kind of collaborate with their colleagues. Because when we speak to our usual counterparts in debt management offices and country treasuries, they maybe have a little bit of visibility onto what's happening on the side on with regards to climate mitigation and adaptation. But it's once you start having those conversations with the Department of Environment, with the Department of Energy, with the Department of Transport, that you really get a sense of everything that's happening at the domestic level, to be able to support those strategies. And it needs to be a cross-ministerial working group. It's too big of a project for it to be, one single ministry that puts forward by themselves, because there's so much kind of data collection and the setting up of actual monitoring of projects and providing information to other parties, that you need to make sure that you have a good group of stakeholders across government to support the project itself. So that's, I think, always our first step to asking, have you talked to your colleagues in other ministries? And I think it's also helpful in the other side of things, because often those ministries have not been on the front lines of engaging with investors, and they haven't been dealing with those stakeholders. So also educating those teams on what is a bond, what is the value of a green bond in particular, is a really helpful way of building out that collaboration. once we have that collaboration and setting up of a list of assets, I think you're well on your way. But that first step is really just collecting the teams together and getting the information that you need.
I'm on the French government's advisory committee, that they call it an OAT committee of the Green Bond. And once they got their first bond out of the way, and it was such a success, it did take 2 years before Agence France Trésor got used to the idea of doing it. And then when they did it, they were surprised. They've been really surprised and continue to be surprised about the extent of investor interest. And now they're talking to all government departments about what other kinds of things get fit into the bond. So that internal dynamic, Switzer, I guess, is fascinating once you get it going, right? This discussion amongst departments and ministries, which I guess must be what we're seeing underway in Thailand now, given that the bond is so recent for Thailand. Are you seeing this?
Yes, so, as you mentioned, collaboration is something that's really key and, to really working on this. And in Thailand, we do have, in the finance sector, we do have a working group on sustainable finance. So together we have members of the Ministry of Finance, we have Coast Bank of Thailand, we have the Securities Exchange Commission, the Office of Insurance Commission, and also the Stock Exchange of Thailand. And so, we really work collaboratively, and we are not only to, on initiatives that we hope will actually incentivize the market to adopt sustainable finance, but also on educating, like we said, the other parties as well. So we reach out from our working group. We also reach out to other parties such as the Transport Ministry. We have also talked with them, our Ministry of the Environment, and Ministry of Chamber of Industry as well. So we do really, I think this collaboration is something that we really need to keep on talking together, building up the network, and really discussing about where we want to see, the ecosystem forward in Thailand. And so it's a lot of talking and a lot of discussion, but I think it's a positive development. Yeah.
But the contribution to the economy of doing this can be large. I mean, up in
Yes.
Issa, the bonds you've issued, rather the Fiji's, significant contributions to the overall fundraising of the economy, and so on, haven't they? So hopefully this kind of dialogue can do a lot more to draw attention to domestic players, but also international investors. A question, in terms of the bond issuance by Treasury in Fiji, what proportion of investors came from overseas? Do you know what the mix is like and how the overseas engagement's in? Because I know the bulk of the bonds were placed domestically.
When we issued the green bond, our focus was on the domestic economy. So it was a locally denominated Fiji dollar bond. So we never thought of the international market. But surprisingly, we were able to, there were interest from the international market for when we float our green bond. So I can't give you the percentage, but there's a small proportion that came from the international market.
Okay, and that's a good example of the extent to which this can be used to pioneer new markets and collect new investors going forward. Caroline, in terms of overall issuance, we need to wrap up now, everyone. I'm afraid I've got so excited, it's already the hour. I'd like to ask you all, advice for your peers, if you're giving advice to others about what to do, and more to the point, what does the future look like for this particular market? But Caroline, can I start off with you in terms of what you found in the report, what we would say advice to others and what the future looks like?
Yeah, so my advice to anybody considering issuing a sovereign GSS bond is read the report. Everything you need to do, detailed in the report, including advice from those who, the horse's mouth, as it were, so those who've already lived the experience. We've gathered literally every single piece of information that you need to know, and we've put it in one report, which, as I've already mentioned, is not that long. So, we need to build a completely sustainable global economy. And, governments have a responsibility to take control of this and to demonstrate the opportunities by coming to the market, greening their expenditures, wrapping it up into green bonds and getting the market going. And the final point that I want to make on this is, if you want liquidity, if you want new investors, the best thing you can do is try to get size. Get some size behind your bond, okay? The bigger, the better. you know, it will attract a broader range of investors from the international community, and yeah, you will get a better result if your bond is bigger. So yeah, I mean, I've got loads more to say on this, as I have on anything to do with green bonds, but I'm going to shut up now and let the more learned speakers make a contribution. Thanks.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you for what is a great report. Dwi Irianti, advice to your peers, what would you say?
Yes, I think to be success in issuing sovereign green bond or green suku, here we need strong leadership, of course, because we need a strong commitment, since we have a lot of extra works, especially in providing impact report, you see. And we need to have a good preparing in selecting project from the very beginning, because we need to use those projects to give a good report to investor. And then the third things that we need to choose or to appoint the right banks to help us in promoting our green suku or green bond. And the latest one, we need to to get advisor. For example, in our case, we asked UNDP and World Bank, who have a lot of expertise in doing reporting and collaboration with all our line ministries who manage the green project itself. So the strong leadership is very important.
Thank you. And that comment about appointing the right banks means I have to go to Farnham now and say, Farnham, your advice, and more to the point, where do you see this market going?
I think very excitingly, we're headed for significant growth in 2021 with the sovereigns that have just announced, and I hope that there'll be more coming. I think in terms of advice, you know, I would just say this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for you as a debt management office to open up your discussion with investors. It's an opportunity to build out a market domestically. It's an opportunity to be an example to, you know, the private sector domestically. So view it that way, and view it as an opportunity to collaborate with your colleagues across ministries, and grab that opportunity to issue.
Apenisa, advice to your peers, and where are we going? Apart, of course, the South Pacific Green Bond guaranteed by Australia. We'll make it work somehow.
I think our success factor rested on the strong political will and determination from the top. When we had that, we were sure that we will get everything we wanted. And also when we, during the issuance process, we had to make sure we connect to the right people in government and other institutions. In that way, get a good level of accountability to ensure that the work on green bond is done. And I want to make another point of emphasis is that the effects of climate change will continue to worsen, but we should not rest. We should make sure that our fight against climate change continues, and we should never get defeated by the effects of climate change on our shores. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. Appreciate it. Sarissa, how does this fit with the movement on sustainalytics that you have done so much to get going in Thailand in past years? How do you see this knitting together? And then, of course, any advice you'd give your peers?
Thanks. So I think, you know, any advice we would give is basically that we really need to have a strong commitment and be determined to do it and to just do it. And, you know, this is because the future really is sustainability. And this is, you know, if we want to build back better from the pandemic, I think this is the path that we really have to work on. And this is will ensure that our future economy is resilient, that we have the strong economies going forward. So, you know, I really think that, in short, you know, we really must embrace sustainability in order to make sure that we have strong and good livelihoods going forward.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for having joined us on this webinar today about sovereign, sustainable, green and social bonds. You heard some fantastic stories from our esteemed panelists, Ririanti, Swissa, Farnham, Apanisa, Caroline. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're not doing this just because we think it's a good idea. We're not doing this because the world ought to be kind to the environment. We're doing this because we have an existential challenge. You heard it from Apanisa. Climate change is threatening the very fabric of our societies, our economies, and our worlds going forward. This is one thing we can do. It is not the only thing. There are so many things that we must do, that we need to do around government policy, around corporate strategies, around rethinking the way we design our cities. It's a big agenda. But with this, with the issuance of green and social bonds and sustainability bonds, we can contribute to growing a market for investments, for capital that will go in the right direction, to try and create the right kinds of investments, the ethical investments that will help create the future that we want our children to live in, rather than the future that we are currently in the process of bequeathing them, which is not a good future, impacted by the disasters of climate change. That's what this is about. It's not because we want to do it because we're warm and cuddly. It's because we need it for our worlds. And right now, as we start recovering from the pandemic, it is utterly critical that as we think of jobs, as we think of growing again, we also must have centre vision, build back better, build green, build sustainable, and create livelihoods for our people that are in the right direction. Remember, we have a choice here. We can create the future that we know to have, or we can let it hit us. That's the choice of this year. Thank you for our speakers. Thank you everyone for being with us. And I look forward to talking again in about a year's time when we have seen so much more happening. It's going to be an exciting year. Remember, recording available, climatebonds.net or on our YouTube channel. And please give a virtual thanks to our speakers. Fantastic that you joined us today. And that's the end of the webinar. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.